I look down, his whole leg's blown off. The impact of the vehicle striking the barrier was so much that I guess his leg had impacted underneath the dash. I mean, it literally blew his leg off. I remember looking at him, looking at his leg. There's arterial blood squirting out. I mean, for whatever reason, that's how it hit me. And so I carried that for a while because I couldn't shake the feeling of being frozen. In all reality, did I physically freeze? No. It was, like I said, 1-2 seconds, you're doing your job. But mentally, yes. Images of just the individual, images looking down. My boots had flesh, blood, hair still stuck to my boots after the call that I had to get off. The screams of people that were in the vehicle still out there screaming. I mean, even now, and reflecting back, I can still hear them. It's one of those, unfortunately, doesn't go away. You're stuck with that. Maybe somebody else that's new, because like I said, I can't offer you 30 years of experience. It's not where I'm at. But if I could offer a new person, someone that's, maybe in that I'm just getting started, or I'm thinking about joining, to upwards of that, 5-year mark, give or take, you're still fairly new and you're still trying to uphold that, I'm trying to be a hard ass like everybody else, if they listen to this and they're struggling with something, then, it's okay to reach out. It's really okay.
You're listening to the ATO Bridging the Divide podcast, brought to you by the Assist the Officer Foundation.
Since 1999, the ATO has given assistance to the first responder community. And now we want to give them a platform to hear their incredible stories.
We also want to hear the stories of the many people that support us.
Our community is small, but it is strong.
We have differences. We don't always agree. And we all make mistakes.
But together we can grow, we can heal.
And we can learn from those mistakes.
And together we can bridge the divide.
Vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's our greatest measure of courage. People who wade into discomfort and vulnerability and tell the truth about their stories are the real badasses. Brene Brown. Wellness is like a never-ending sculpture, and we are our own artist for self-improving. However, sometimes we need artist tools, like a Dr. T, Barbara Crump, Melissa McLemore, Dottie Claggett, or the great Tanya Glenn, to assist us in refining and improving our own self-masterpiece. Welcome back, ATO fans. I'm Joe King. Today I'm sitting with my buddy, Randy Aguilar, and we are sitting down with a guest that I believe defines courage, and after hearing his story, I believe the loyal listeners will agree. He was born in Dallas, Texas, like me, grew up in Rowlett, Texas, played football, and powerlifted for Rowlett High. His physique is evidence he still clearly works out. He started firefighting in Dallas in 2018 and quickly learned how high speed Dallas, Texas is. He joined the Urban Search and Rescue Unit, which is a specialized unit that is a surgical approach to seeking and rescuing victims after mass casualty. He's a Day 1 ATO Bridging the Divide P1. He's a husband to Megan, dog dad to Braxton, Tucker, and Brisket. ATO fans, welcome on Dallas Fire and Rescue, Zack Ta. Zack, thanks for coming on.
Man, thanks. That's incredible. you nearly had me choked up in the beginning, man.
Yeah, well, that's why I wasn't
awesome.
looking at you.
Yeah, we start
awesome.
high.
Yeah.
Man, I'm humbled to be here, and I don't know, man. It's just it's weird. Like I said, it's weird being on this side of the table and not listening from.
Well, for the listener, this is the first time we've met you and your wife. So you reached out to me months ago, and we kind of just been text buddies up until today. And I'm glad we finally got to meet.
Yeah, and and like I told Megan in the beginning, I thought it was important that I reach out to you guys, just because with what you're doing, if no one reaches out and says, hey, this affected me this way, or, I've been able to take something away from this. I mean, at the end of the day, you're sitting here doing podcasts and you're like, well, is anybody taking anything away from this? And, that was my main reason for reaching out to you guys, is just to let you guys know, hey, you're doing a good job. And it's, it is affecting people. It affects people's lives.
Well, I really appreciate that. And I always share, I get messages from people from all over, and police, fire, and a lot of civilian. Hell, we have a civilian that's coming into town from New York we never met, and she's flying in just to volunteer at one of the ATO events coming up and meet us. It's kind of surreal, and here are firefighters. We don't know how many firefighters listen, or how many other police in other states listen to us, and we got people in other countries that are doing these downloads, and it is still kind of odd to us to have people reach out. But trust me when I say I appreciate it, and I send it. I usually take screenshots, and I send it to the core group, Misty, Danny, and Randy, and Ed, and just to kind of show, hey, somebody's liking this,
right? So, and you coming here is very unique, because we always figure out a way. Or one of my goals is how to measure this and relate it to our growth, and we're a fund or nonprofit, so we always want to raise money. So we want. I'm always looking for measurables, and this is probably the biggest measurable we've had so far, because we know we're helping people. When we actually get someone that we've helped, and then we get you in here, to talk more about what you're going on and what you're going to discuss today and how you got here, I think is really valuable to us. It's immeasurable. It's great.
For our little podcast, it's a true success story. For what our mission was. And I remember starting off and talking to Randy. Randy and I were working out in the gym, beating the hell out of each other, Legends Fit.
I couldn't tell you worked out. I mean,
yeah.
Oh, he's looking at me.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So we'd be beating the hell out of each other, and told Randy, I said, we can help one person. By this podcast, it's worth it. And by your response and you being here, and also many other responses we got, and some I hadn't even shared with some folks, because they're just friends of mine that have certain episodes have meant something to them. And it's really weird how some episodes hit people in some ways, and some are just kind of like, oh wow, you like that one? Okay, well, good,
right.
But it doesn't matter,
and it's very, very humbling, because if a lot of people know us, and as big a goofballs as we are, and how much we're always screwing around, the fact that we know we're helping people, and it's really humbling. I think that's the best word to use to describe it.
I want to get into your beautiful wife, Megan. She's sitting here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where do you work?
Yeah, so I'm Megan. I am a registered nurse at Children's Health. I work in Plano. Okay. I grew up in Austin and made my way to Lubbock to attend Texas Tech. I got a degree in community, family, and addiction sciences, so that's where my mental health background comes from. And then I went on to get my BSN to become a nurse. And that's what I do. I love it. I still work in psych to this day. I work on a pediatric eating disorder floor, so I kind of have a medical and psych combination unit, I guess you could say. I've been an advocate for mental health since I can't even remember, and it's kind of something I've always preached to Zack and made sure he knew about, but I don't think that he really understood until probably the last year. I definitely think me having a background in it is kind of a blessing and a curse for life, but there's just still not enough advocacy and just promotion out there. And there's so many people like firefighters and police officers, that have this, they need to be tough, and there's not people out there that help them. And those are some people that need the most help. So I'm really happy to be here, and I'm eternally grateful for y'all.
Well, with this profession, first responder profession, it's hard. Well, hell, even your profession, Megan. I mean,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
look what
Yeah,
you have
we
to deal
see stuff
with.
too.
Yeah, you see every day. You see the same thing. So you have to. Your mind has to decompress and detach, and you have to cope with it in your own ways too, right?
Yes,
and
definitely.
So it's not just police and fire, and we're going to have on. We want to have on some other doctors. We have a SWAT doctor that's already been recorded, Metzger. He's a really good one. His is a really fascinating episode. But I want to have on all walks of first responders. Anybody,
Absolutely.
and I'm having on, even the DA that did the Dr. Death episode. She's come. I already have hers recorded. But this profession, the ATO got on the forefront of this whole counseling deal and starting the confidential counseling way back when. And it's taken off, and other agencies have tried to model it, and I don't think they've caught that.
I would like
magic.
to say, and I can't speak for the guys that started. I think we just got really lucky in how when it started the way it's gone,
Right.
and we've been very, very fortunate. And I know, and like I say, it was all luck. I know they put a lot of effort into how they got there, but a lot of it was, I think, just luck and timing that we were able to do as well as what we've done so far.
Yeah, well, I think it had to do with the people that were running it back then, the Pumpkin, and Dottie getting involved so early on. The Meyer Clinic was one of our first that
Right.
Crump works for. So it was a lot of luck, probably, and then also just, hey, however it happened, it happened.
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
the luck and that it was something that was
Yeah.
very, very needed. And I think at the beginning, I'm sure firefighters are the same way as cops. No one would talk about anything. Just go home, rub some
Right.
dirt on it, drink
Right.
a beer, and then roll out the next day and like nothing happened.
Right.
And I think we've seen over the years that that's not been the most healthy
no,
thing.
No.
Definitely
and I
not.
I can attest to that.
It's a
That's
Band-Aid. It's a Band-Aid,
Oh, yeah.
and
and it'll eventually get ripped off.
yeah, multiple times. Right?
Sure.
All right. I want to get into a little bit of DFR history. This is y'all's 50th year anniversary. I want to give a little piece of history. Special shout out to Sandra Gonzalez and Adriana Gallegos for this information on its history. In 1872, after delays from the Civil War and Dallas Reconstruction, Dallas Company No. 1 began fire operations on July 4th, 1872. This station was equipped with 2 hand pump engines and 10 small extinguishers. W.C. Bud Connor was elected to be chief of the 14-member fire department. Horse-drawn steam pumper made by Silsby Manufacturing Company was purchased in July of 1873. The apparatus was named Old Silby. 3 years later, the Dallas Hook and Ladder Company No. 2 was formed. Thank y'all, Sandra and Adriana, for that. And shout out to Chief Bill, too. He's on that committee for the DFR's great 150-year anniversary. Y'all been around longer than DPD. Well, Zach, since you're a avid scuba diver, are you ready to dive into this?
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's do it.
Growing up in Rowlett, talk about that. You're on the periphery of Dallas. Can you tell the listener where Rowlett is?
Yeah, so Rowlett, it's just off I-30, headed east of Dallas. I don't know what the population is now. I know whenever I was growing up, it was big town, small feel, if you will. It was probably 50, 60,000 people, which, good sized town, but it never felt that way. Like anytime when you'd be out at the store, you'd run into people from school, or, you'd run into somebody's parents, or growing up, I just was like, well, I grew up in a small town, until I got out of that, went to college, and I'm meeting people from towns of, oh, well, yeah, we got 50 in our town. And I'm like, oh, wow, well,
Yeah.
that's so much for my little town.
Well, it's also next to Rockwall, right?
Yes.
It borders up there, basically the lake. Ray Hubbard
Sharon Ray
divides it.
Hubbard. Uh-huh.
Yeah. I live out there. So, and I like the Rockwall area a lot, and Rowlett. And so what year were you born?
93.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
I just graduated. Randy and I are graduating. So anyway, Rowlett was known for Dollar Routier incident, and I'm sure, have you done any research on that thing that happened there in '97?
Yeah.
There's
there's been several incidents that have come out of Rowlett that have been kinda,
noteworthy.
Yeah.
Darley Ridge was the big one that happened in '97, and there was nothing out there. The harbor wasn't even built in Rockwall. I mean, there was nothing out there in that area when that happened.
It's funny, because I remember back, and I'm like, I remember having Dairy Queen. You had China Lake, Albertsons, and I mean that was it.
China Lake.
Yeah. Hey, it was good growing up.
Yeah.
That's all we had.
Well, hell, Ponchos was good growing up
Yeah.
too. It was like quantity over quality.
Yeah. Ponchos.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Just walk out of there having to wear a diaper the rest of the day.
A good cleanse is always good.
Yeah. If you want a colonic, you just go to Ponchos and raise the flag a few times. What was your favorite sport growing up? What did you play?
Growing up, my favorite sport was always football, and I think that stemmed from my dad. I mean, he's a huge Cowboys fan, like, ride or die Cowboys.
Yeah.
Whether they're good, bad, mostly bad, but whatever.
We got spoiled here for so long,
right
and now
I think that was it. Is, he was right there. I mean, with y'all in the early '90s,
Yeah.
like, hey, Cowboys, we're out here doing it. We're out here winning, getting Super Bowls, and so that it stemmed from that. And he's really passionate about high school football and in particular, like gloves.
Texas, you got to be.
Yeah. I mean, every year, Dave Campbell's high school magazine comes out. My dad's like, look, I got it. First day, like, I got you. Did you see, Rowlett's going to do this? They're getting this coach or whatever, So football has just always been a huge, huge part of my life.
That's cool. We talked about the Cowboys parade going to shit in the SWAT episodes, and it seems so far. It seems like so long ago that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Randy and I were graduating high school about whenever that triplets are going on.
It's about, 28 years? Yeah, give or take.
Yeah.
Well, I'm coming up on, but this summer's my 30-year high school reunion too. So you just
Sorry. I'm not trying to rub salt in it.
No. Hell, we're old. All right. When did you start first having an interest in first responder world?
Oh gosh, my interest from that, I'll have to kind of, I guess, dig deep. But so whenever I was in, we'll say, kindergarten, first grade, and I might be a little off on that, but we took a tour. I was in Cub Scouts. We took a tour of the Rowlett Police Station, and that night, went around, walking around. I don't remember too much of it, but I remember after, we stayed forever. And my mom was talking to one of the police officers that was kind of hitting that up, and his name he's retired now, John Johnson was his name. And so she got in with him and pretty much decided that she wanted to become a volunteer for the police department. I think they were looking for maybe volunteers at that time or something. And so her decision, because of that, she wanted to essentially learn more about the community. And what better place to do that than the police department? Because, they're going to know what's good, what's bad, what's going on. So from then on out, it seemed like, she helped them do a lot of things with their Citizens Police Academy. She helped them get their VIPS program up and running. And so I think seeing her being so involved all the time with the police department and eventually also the Rowlett Fire Department, that just kind of just pulled me to that profession, because I've always been around cops. I've always been around, firemen, more so cops than firemen, but it just piqued my interest, I guess, and it seemed like a cool gig. Like, you drive around and you're in a squad car, or you're driving around in a fire engine, and you're just, you're helping people, and that, to me, that it just seemed like an awesome job. And I was like, I don't know that I could see myself doing anything else. And at times, I would stray away from that thing, like, oh, well, I could go into the medical field, or I could go be a lawyer or whatever, as I got older, thinking, monetary, like, oh, where can I make the most money? But it always came back to, I'm not doing what I feel like I should be doing,
Right, your calling.
Right. And so that, I think that's where it originally stemmed from, was her volunteer work with the city, being involved the way she was.
Okay. You mentioned to me before you watched some cool cop shows growing up. What were some of those you mentioned?
And I still like Cops. I still like watching Cops. They got
He does.
the new season's coming out soon. I think I keep seeing
they
it
brought
pop
it
up
back.
everywhere on Fox. Man, Cops was awesome. I I know y'all may or may not, want to talk about it, but Dallas SWAT was always cool to
No,
me.
hey, I don't mind talking. Steve Claggett, he cringes every time it's brought up because he's caught so much shit over the years.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine so. But no,
Yeah.
man, when I was growing up, that was awesome. Like,
Yeah.
you're sitting there watching Dallas SWAT, you're like, man, this is going on like,
in the city,
right over there,
right across the
like-
bridge. No, Claggett is a true badass, though. He really
Yeah.
is. Why did you want to be a cop initially?
I don't know if it's because that was my first real experience with public safety is just being around cops. I mean, really and truly, I never wanted to be a fireman. I just
Yeah.
kind of fell into it.
Good choice.
Yeah, hey, I could turn back time.
Yeah. But no, man, I just always thought policing was awesome. Like, they're out, as a kid growing up into a young adult and even in college, I was like, cops are there, they're protecting people, when you may not like them, but when stuff hits the fan, it's like, you ain't looking around going, where are the firemen at? Like, you need the cops there. I mean, you're, and in a sense, I guess, I just look at them, to me, cops are the ultimate superhero. They really are. And I kind of, not that I'm a huge comic guy, but I do really like Batman, and I would equate being a cop to being Batman. I mean, you work behind the scenes. No one ever sees what you're doing. It's always a dark place wherever you are. And then, you come in, save the day, and then you might somewhat kind of get some credit, but then everybody's like, that guy's just out there giving tickets, whatever. I mean, all your work is hidden. And for some reason, I've always been drawn to that because I'm not, even being here today, I'm not a, what's the word for it? I guess
You're not really extroverted in anything you do.
No,
You don't
yeah.
accept praise well.
yeah, like I like working alone. I like, I go to the gym, I put my work in,
Get out of
nobody
there.
needs to see that. Like so I don't know. I guess that's what drew me to it was just the whole kind of undercover type, you're working behind the scenes. You're not in the public eye.
There's a lot of dirty work in police,
Right.
and then it's. And I'm glad you give a shout out to Batman because I love Batman.
Yeah, and I planned that.
You
I
did,
planned that.
Thank you. I'll have that in the opening. The music. No, there's a lot in like in the Batman movies. There's a lot of people that hate him. There's there's a lot of people that dislike cops, but there's firefighters now are starting to get a lot of ire from folks out
Right.
on calls
I mean,
getting
that's-
shot at, and
right.
y'all fight all the time.
Right.
You get some of these combative victims or
Right.
witnesses that think they know more than y'all when they're trying
Sure.
to save somebody, jump up and start fighting. Hell, it's Megan saying, I'm sure y'all get
Right.
the same thing, and you
That's-
go,
Not so much on my unit
Not-
now,
not
but
so
I
much
definitely
children, yeah, but-
I did work on a pediatric psych unit in Austin, and
oh man, yeah.
I had my fair
That
share of
was-
fights there.
It was an interesting time.
I worked at that at Terrell State. I'm sure you heard of Terrell State.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that thing. It was like Shutter Island with DiCaprio. It was a creepy. Yeah. Anyway, what drew you to the service aspect? Is helping others both the action? You think?
I think one, yes, the action. Like, I mean, when you're not in it and you're looking at it from the outside, I guess from a civilian point of view, I mean, you think like, oh, if you're a fireman, like you go to work every day and you're sitting on the bumper with the Dalmatian and the bell hits and then, oh my gosh, look at him, he's up there.
I was looking for the Dalmatian when you walked in.
Yeah, he's it's like, oh
Disappointed.
man, you're fighting fire every day and you're saving babies and all this stuff, and it's like once you're actually there, that's not. That's not. I mean, does it happen? Sure, but that's not every single day.
Yeah.
And that's. I think at the end of the day, I reflect back personally on. I got into just public safety in general to help people, and I think it's taken light a lot of the time, right? Because everybody's like, "Oh, what'd you say on your interview? You like to help people?" And then, everybody's like, well, yeah, that's what I said, trying to get the job type of deal. And they're like, well, you'll find out real quick, kid, whenever somebody calls you at 3 a.m. for a 2-week toe pain, how bad you really want to help people. You know what I mean? Like it changes kind of your view of what you deem as helping someone.
Right.
And so I think it's a good thing, really, for any first responders to not get caught up in maybe some of the little calls, especially in today's time. I mean, the 911 system is definitely abused, but if you reflect back on, hey, how'd you feel when you first, got your letter saying, hey, you're hired? What, at that time in your life, what were you thinking you were going to go do? And try and reflect back on that and keep that with you. And I think in doing that, it definitely will kind of keep your attitude better and help you have more positive days than negative days.
Yeah.
I think we all need reminders of that because we can, cops, firefighters, be very cynical because of
Sure.
what you're just saying
Sure.
there, that you get it's just somebody that's on
Right.
a free ride. And
Like-
it's but you got to keep in mind and remember why you're doing it and why you're
Right.
got here, because that one day when you do get to help that one person.
Right. And it's a very, I think it's a very cliche thing, right? You're like, oh man, remember when you were first excited when you got the job? And you're like, oh, that was, how many years ago now and thousands of calls ago. But I mean, if you lose sight of that, and at the end of the day, you're coming to work and you're like, oh, man, you're just moaning and complaining all day and stuff. Why are you here? Yeah. What good, this is not doing you any good except for, maybe a paycheck. I mean, why, if you don't love the job, if you don't, whether it's police, fire, EMS, nursing, whatever, if you're not coming in every day and loving your job, not that you have to have a great day every day, because bad days happen, but what are you doing?
And how long you been on?
I've been with Dallas almost 4 years. 4 years next week.
I not to say it's going to happen, but the longer you're here, I think just people get more beat down over and
They
over.
do. Yeah. They
until
do.
until you make that one mistake, and then everybody
Right.
hates you. And we get it here all the time when there's just people that just give up and stop wanting to work, and they
Right.
don't want to. They lose their aggression or their vigor for the job, and that's. Any way we can try to bring that back to people, I think, is very, very important.
Right.
Well, I think the mental wellness aspect too is really that's a big player in just the constant beat down, the small pinpricks, right? Of just
Right.
of
Especially
everyday
in
crap.
in a city the size of Dallas. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
y'all see it just how we see it. I mean, your calls. There's always calls in the city. You've always got multiple pages of calls. I mean, it's
Yeah.
I mean, and that's not
Most of them are
and-
bullshit too, but it's okay. You still got to go to those,
Right, and that's not in any way knocking smaller departments. It's just that's the nature of it. When you have millions of people in a city, you're gonna be busier than other places.
It's okay to
And-
knock them.
All right. The July 2016 shootings had several effects on applicants. I was on the applicant boards a little bit after that, and I heard, like 3 years after the July shootings, I heard from a lot of applicants that said basically they are applying because of Chief Brown's words of what he had to say about, hey, if you want to make a change, put down the picket sign and get up here and apply, and then that's how you do it. And then had other people that said, man, I was going to apply sooner, but I was thinking, damn, seeing the aggression that was that cops were seeing across the country, not just in Dallas. Hell, Baton Rouge was like right after 3 days after the July 7th shootings, and it was really I'll tell you from a law enforcement standpoint, we were scared shitless that this was going to be the new norm, right? So when all that was going on, did that change your mind at all? Of like, I want to get in this profession.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, 100% without a doubt. I can tell you the events really around the country, but mostly with Dallas, from about we'll say into 2015 into 2017. That's what really, I took a step back and said, do I really want to go do this? I mean, do I want to be out there on the street and everybody hates you? I mean, and was that actually the case? I would go as far as say no, but the way that the media was at that time and portraying, kind of flipping some stories, maybe
Right.
not telling everything, people not doing their homework.
Yeah,
that
still goes on. Yeah.
Right, but that's at that time I think was the kind of the pinnacle of when that switched over to.
Yeah.
You see something in the news and it's like, oh, that's the truth. Well, then people just
Yeah.
run with it, and
Yeah.
that's when you get the problems that you do. And so, yeah, I would 100% say that's probably how I found my way into firefighting over law enforcement.
Okay. Yeah, well, even most of what people do now is they want to have a catchphrase, right? They want to jump on a catchphrase
Right.
Or a hashtag or something to get likes and shares.
Exactly.
They don't even know what the hell they're talking about. They just
Right.
throw it out there, and they just buzzwords and it's like defund the police, right? You want that to
Right.
happen. You'll have like Mad Max days out
Right.
there. That's what it would be like,
Right.
Bring it on.
Yeah, bring it on. We'll be fighting over oil and yeah. So you got into firefighting. Tell us about that.
So initially, I guess I'll back up just a hair. So
Okay.
I graduated college at the end of 15. Going into 2016, I was working on a master's at Stephen F. Austin. About halfway through the year, I was like, man, like I looked at my student debt. I was like, I need to really start going to work, like, because I was majoring in I was majoring in criminal justice and public administration, like not two big money makers. So
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so I'm gonna start hunting for a job. So probably middle of 16, I came back to Rockwall at that time, started looking for a job, found my way into a PEO in Rockwall doing workers' compensation. So I started doing that, working the corporate life, and I did that for, I guess, about a year. And then I happened to see just a flyer for Rockwall Fire Department about doing volunteer work. And I was like, maybe I'll put in for this. Maybe I'll give them a call and just kind of see what this is about. Maybe, pique my interest a little. And so I sent them an application, ended up getting hired with them as a volunteer. And I went up there one night, worked, my first, I guess, technical shift in like October of 17, and slept all night. So that was good. Everybody was working out. They were eating. And I was like, there might be something
Make
to
a living
this.
out of this.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
might be something to this gig. Okay. So, so immediately I was like, well, I can't apply anywhere. I'm not an EMT. I'm not a paramedic. I don't have a fire certification. So I started applying to departments anywhere and everywhere that would take me. One of the first ones was Dallas. So I had an application, and they're pretty quick. And there wasn't many more hiring at the time when you could apply, and they'd send you to all the school and training. So in January, I started going to night class to get my EMT. So I did that for 4 months. Worked, full-time, 40 hours a week, 8 to 5. Was going to night class 2 nights a week, and then the other 2 nights I was staying the night at the fire station. So I did that, and then going into the summer of 18, I got an email from Dallas saying, hey, here's your offer letter. Finished up the rest of the process with them, and then started in July.
Megan, what did you think about his career move? Getting into
Okay,
that?
so I met Zach in May of 2018. So
Oh.
he had already
The ball was
applied.
rolling.
Yeah,
Okay.
the ball was rolling.
You knew what you were getting into.
Yeah, he was still working at doing workers' comp when I did meet him, but I knew that this was in the works, and he had already been working at Rockwall as a volunteer, so I kind of saw that, and I was totally okay with it. My fear comes on the police side of things. I was eternally grateful that he was not going to do that. I have an extreme fear of abandonment, and my fear of something happening to him, not because if he would do anything, but someone else doing something to him. I didn't see that on the fire side. Now I can understand how it can happen
Yeah.
on both. But just like he said, the media, and that's all you really see if you don't have anyone that that's a police officer. So I was good with it. It didn't make a difference to me. I was happy that he was happy.
You had your psychology background at that point, right?
I had just graduated nursing school. So
Okay.
we actually met the day before I graduated nursing school. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah.
Nice. Megan, you deal with a lot of trauma yourself. You have a background in psychology. How do you cope with all that you see? And we're going to get into the hubby here in a minute, but I want to know what you do to compartmentalize things you see.
I've definitely had to learn. In my first job, I saw a lot of trauma on the foster care system side of things that just extreme. Like, I would go out in the middle of the night and be crying in the parking lot. It was so traumatic for me. And I think that's really where I had to learn how to let go and know that I was doing my best job to help whoever it was in that moment. And I was doing everything I could. And then I'm going to go home. And I worked out some. I like to do like nothing. That's my form of coping, is sitting there,
Decompressing.
watching TV, focusing on something else that has absolutely nothing to do with trauma, crime, anything of that sort. I would rather watch drama shows.
Yeah.
And then now I've done a lot better job taking care of myself, like mentally and physically. I've started working out a lot more, which definitely makes a difference in the way my brain works. I feel like I'm pretty lucky. I am very low on the anxiety, which is pretty rare
Good
these
for you.
days.
Yeah.
And so
Zach's pretty lucky then.
Yeah, that too.
Yes, very much.
But I feel like I just do a really, really good job of basically separating myself from work completely. I know when I go home, I do not check my email. My boss knows that. I do not I don't do anything for work when I'm not at work. And I am really lucky to have a boss that understands that. But it's what makes it best for me. And that can be really hard, especially for people that don't know how to do that, because you can't teach it. So if you don't know how to do it, then you take on everything and you feel everything. And I'm an empath and I feel for a lot of people, but I've learned to separate myself and know that when I'm at work, I do the best job I can and I take care of those kids and I want to make their life better. Quite literally, children's is make children's life better. That's their motto. And that is my job. And I stick to that to my core. And then when I go home, that's not my job anymore. And I don't take that. I know some people might look at that and be like, why would you do that? Like, that doesn't seem very caring. And I'm like, well, I got to take care of myself or else I can't take care of anyone else. So I think that's how I do it. I'm very strict in my work boundaries is my biggest thing.
One of the things that we used to cope with stuff, and it was kind of a light switch moment for us, is 8 hours is 8 hours. Mm-hmm. When you get off, put the car up and go home, you turn it off. I mean, it's not easy. Sometimes you got to do that. But if you take the stuff home with you,
you just continue to
drag
think
you
about
down.
it.
Yeah,
right.
you got to be able to, it's not easy to flip that switch, but it also takes time and experience to realize, when you come to that moment, okay, 8 hours, 8 hours,
right.
You can't solve everything. We can make 100 arrests in one day.
Right.
It's unrealistic, but a bunch of arrests in one day, but the shit's still going to be there when you get back. So when you realize you can only do what you can do, that I think it's a very healthy move and mentally, physically, emotionally.
I think that's one of the best things about working in the hospital. For me, I know, one, I only have to go 3 days a week. So that's less than half my week that I'm at the hospital. And 2, I work 3 days in a row. So I'm there and then I'm gone. And then I don't think about it for the other 4 days that I'm at home. And when I first started, it was really hard. I would think about those kids that you just hear things about and you're like, how are there people that do this to kids? But you have to know that you can't catch those people. You can't make them better. All you can do is help the kids. So that's how I try to think about it. I try to hound Zach about that too, that he's just helping people in that moment and that's all he can do. And he's doing the best job he can. And we're working on it.
Well, people that are in the hero profession, which we all are, it's hard for us to fail, right? Or feel that we
because
fail.
For us, failure's not an option.
Exactly. And in looking back, damn, I wish I could have done more. I could have done something different to maybe make the outcome better.
Right.
But that's hard. And kudos for you for recognizing what works for you, because what works for you doesn't work for Randy or work for me. So what works for you?
I tell my kids that all the time.
Good.
I'm like,
good for you.
There's 100 coping skills, thousands in this world. And what's going to work for me is not going to work for you. And it might work for you for, 2 weeks, but it probably won't work for you after that. So we got to find what works for you.
You got to, it's like an ever evolving masterpiece, right?
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
just continually painting.
Everyone grieves differently.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Did you notice a change in him whenever he started up becoming, involved with DFR?
I wouldn't say immediately. I think things changed the most when we moved in together, which was a year after we started dating. So we met in 2018 and 2019 in the summer. We moved in together.
Like May of 19,
and he had just moved to, or he was about to move to another station.
Yes, we moved in together in May of 19, and then October of 19, I went from Old East Dallas down to South Oak Cliff off of Hampton and Kernwood.
Yeah, and that's when things probably changed the most. I could see until probably the last year, but in a way of he was exhausted. He didn't know how to deal with it. We were learning how to live together, so it didn't help that he had stressors we both did stressors of that. he didn't know how to take care of himself in forms of sleep, because he basically in his head, he was like, I'm coming home. It's daytime. I got to be up. And I'm like, no, you need to go take a nap. Like, you were up all night. You've been up for 24 hours. It's not normal. So I feel like that really changed his mood. Not in the worst way. I won't ever say that. He was still a great partner, and but it was definitely a change from when he started.
Right. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Kernwood and Hampton and Kernwood.
Yeah,
I grew up. I mean, well, kindergarten to third grade, I went to Bertie Alexander, and 1317 Kernwood was my address.
Yep.
It's funny. Now
I've probably passed it a million times.
Well, it burnt down. The house that I lived in burnt down. They rebuilt it, and it looks like the most pimped out house on the street.
Really?
Yeah, it's the newest one.
Is
Yeah.
it for sale?
Yeah, you don't want to live there. It's a lot different than when I lived there.
Yeah.
Shit, every other house is a drug house.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about some critical incidents that, because people see, like we've already talked about the media. We kind of see police and fire incidents on the police incidents are talked about on the news than fire, right? Mm-hmm. I want you to kind of paint a picture of some critical incidents that really stuck with you. That way the listener can get a feel of what a firefighter in Dallas has to deal with.
Okay. So initially, I guess, 4 months ago or whenever all this kind of came to a head, and I did start seeking therapy. I had 3 incidents. It came down to 3 incidents that really were sticking with me, that I was taking home, and I couldn't shake them. And each one had its own, I guess, beast, if you will, of why it was bothering me so bad. I'll talk about one of them, and I'll kind of refer back to Dr. T's episode. I'm sure you'll get back into that too. But one of the things she says is, there's 3 different responses. Is you've got fight, you've got flight, and you've got freeze. And one of the calls, I had a freeze response. At least in my mind, that's what it was. I was working for somebody else that day. I was on the truck and ended up being on the highway. We pull up. It was a just motor vehicle accident. So I get out, I go walking up, and dude, this car is destroyed. I'm talking, the ones where you're looking at it and you're like, what is that? You can't even tell what the car is. And so I go walking up, and an 18-wheeler had stopped. And so the driver of that was over above, kind of near the car, and he was kind of walking around freaking out. And I was like, man, what's the deal? And so I'm actually the first one to walk up there, and there's a guy laying on the ground next to the vehicle. And so I go walking up to him, and really I was going to go check for a pulse, because I'm like, there's no way this guy's, there's no way. And as soon as I went to check him, the guy just flips over and starts moaning, and I look down, his whole leg's blown off. The impact of the vehicle striking the barrier was so much that I guess his leg had impacted underneath the dash. I mean, it literally blew his leg off. And so when I looked down, to me, in my mind, and even as I'm trying to think back through it now, I remember looking at him, looking at his leg. There's arterial blood squirting out. I mean, it's just like they tell you, in training, like, hey, get a tourniquet, put a tourniquet on this guy. And immediately that was my response was, hey, when you get a tourniquet on him, But for me, in that moment, it felt like minutes, right? I mean, in all actuality, it was 1-2 seconds maybe before I was like, oh, crap, let's start working on this guy. And it, for whatever reason, just that's how it hit me. That's, and so I carried that for a while because I couldn't shake the feeling of being frozen, and it bothered me, because then you start thinking like, man, like what happened to me there? Like why did I freeze on that? And in all reality, did I physically freeze? No. Like it was, like I said, 1-2 seconds, you're doing your job, but mentally, yes. I think that kind of incapacitated me for a little bit, as far as me feeling in control, being able to do, we'll we'll say, medical treatments, because I took a step back and I'm like, what's going on? Why am I feeling like that? So that was one of them that I had to work back through. Obviously it was, a traumatic situation. Guy's on the ground, has his, leg blown off. I'll go into another one for you. This was my most traumatic one. And I'll try and leave out details just out of respect for everyone involved. But I was working overtime one day, and I get called to a wreck late at night. And we pull up at the wreck. So we get out. There's a car kind of on the side of the road. We didn't really know what was going on, so we go walking up there, and an individual had apparently was, I guess, going out with their friends for a night out, and this individual, for whatever reason, I guess, was in an argument with other people in the vehicle, and the individual decided that the best way to just solve this problem was to exit the vehicle, going full speed down a freeway. In turn, the individual was struck multiple times by other vehicles. So you probably had about we'll say 400 foot, just, I don't know how else to describe it to you except for carnage. I mean, it just, pieces of flesh, blood, everything. I mean, it was just, and so walking up, I look over at the car, and there's people screaming, and I'm just like, man, what is going on? I had no idea. And all of a sudden, I look in front of me, and I spot the individual on the ground, pretty unrecognizable. I've never seen a human look the way this person did. God, I hope I never have to again. That one was hard. And in that moment, there was nothing that we could have done differently. I mean, obviously the individual, they were gone before we left the station, but being there in that moment, for whatever reason, just, it didn't process it all, looking back on it, we might've been there 20 minutes or so. And then, DPD was like, hey, y'all are good. We're shutting this thing down, doing our investigation, whatnot. So we left, we got back. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I just laid there in bed, eyes wide open, just thinking, what was that? They don't when you get hired, they don't tell you about that. They don't tell you. No. They say, you're going to see some stuff and this and that, but man, that one, that was hard. That was.
Okay, after that incident, and thank you for sharing that, by the way. I know that's not easy. How many days after did you replay that in your head, if you can remember?
Every day.
Really?
Every day, yeah.
What image was it just kept sticking with you?
Multiple images, images of just the individual, images looking down. My boots had, flesh, blood, hair still stuck to my boots after the call that I had to get off. The screams of people that were in the vehicle still out there screaming. I mean, even now, in reflecting back, I can still hear them. It's, it's one of those that unfortunately doesn't go away. You're stuck with that.
Probably always will.
Yeah.
Megan, did y'all talk about this?
Yes. The next day, but it was really it was weird. It was like a matter of fact, this situation, not like, oh, I just went through this. Oh, this is what happened on shift last night, which is pretty normal for us. We talk about every call he goes on for the most part. But that was really weird because that is I felt the trauma from that, and I couldn't wrap my head around how he was sitting here telling me what had happened and was just, yep, this is what happened. I was like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, just very short, matter of the fact.
It-
It's kind of weird.
It's like that meme of that dog sitting in there with a cup of coffee and just sitting in flames, says, "I'm fine."
Yes,
right?
literally.
Yeah.
That was it.
'Cause
Exactly.
That's. It sounds like you were already minimizing it, trying to minimize it in your
certainly,
brain,
yeah.
and
Oh, absolutely.
giving her a
100%.
message that it was. Yeah, it wasn't that big a deal. I'm okay.
Yeah.
That's where you were trying to cope with
Right.
it.
And
But
that's-
internally you were not.
Right. Internally, it was on replay. I mean, I'd lay down to go to sleep. It was there. I'd wake up. It was there. And it stuck with me. And then,
And you had to continue working.
yes.
Okay.
Well, let me ask you this. So how much time did you have on when this happened?
Yeah, give or take 3 years or so.
See, something what I remember always when I trained and when I was on training, you always emulate what the people around you do.
Right.
So how much of that did you see how everybody else reacted to it? Did you try to like, okay, I got to put this face on. I got to act like it's
Oh,
no big
certainly,
deal.
yeah.
How much of that did it affect you that you knew? And then looking back, it's like, man, I should have thinking, man, this ain't fucking normal. Why
Right.
are they acting like it's so normal? Or how did
Right. I
you
mean,
process?
and I think everyone around me, were they bothered by it? Maybe. Probably. I would hope so. As a human, I'd hope you'd be bothered by that. But, they were pretty nonchalant. Just, yeah, we're here. It's a call. We're nothing we can do. We're going back. And I think I tried to, at this time, I had already come over. I'd switched stations from 40s to 19s because I had gotten into USAR by that point. So, coming into that, like, I mean, I'm still a rookie today. Like, you don't want to walk into a new station and, a few months into it, it's like you have a call with some of the guys and you're like, oh crap, man, you start wigging out or whatever. And they're like, man, who is it? This rookie, he doesn't, he got 3 years on, what's bothering him? And that, at that time, that was my mindset, was just in a way trying to get rid of it so that I could be, seem normal like everyone else. But, at the same time also trying to protect my reputation, as a rookie. Like, you don't want the rookie out there crying on the side of the road. Like, that looks pretty bad. You know what I mean?
It sucks that we do that to ourselves when we
Right, and
should be showing this emotion and not bottling it up.
And
We
that,
need to let it
and
out.
I think that comes back to just, the stigma of, hey, you're a big tough guy, you're a first responder, and this is what you see, and,
Basically being like a soldier, and
Yeah.
and yeah, you're saying that the image they were putting out there was like, hey, it's just not that big a deal, and we're going on to the next.
right. I
and
mean, you get back in the apparatus. Hey, check my phone, and we're
well,
off.
you don't know what was going on in their head either.
No,
and,
right?
and-
Right,
and
I mean,
guys, our egos are so stupid that we want to nonchalant
Yes.
to put on that face when we
Yeah.
need to be.
right.
Yeah. Well, that's how some people have to cope. But
Yeah.
Right.
but the what's buried underneath the pain and
Right.
and the suffering that's buried underneath is real, right?
Yes.
Do you remember? Did you ever see Saving Private Ryan?
Uh-huh.
Okay, remember when Tom Hanks climbed back over? He got away from his troops and he broke down crying because he was the
Right.
captain, he was the leader.
You can put
And
your
he got
face
away
on.
from
You
him.
got to
Yes.
put your face on in front of
Yep.
everybody.
Right.
Yeah, and that, I mean, 100%. It just, almost like the movie. The next day, whenever I left, I got in my car, was driving home, got on the highway, and I passed right by, the place that I just was 6 hours earlier, and I broke down crying and I sobbed from, that area all the way till I got home in Fort Worth. I mean, that's,
Hey man, you had to let it out. Shit.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, and it's,
And Zach's really good at putting face on for everyone in his life.
Good you. It seems.
Yeah. And I think that was really hard for me too, because I'm a helper and I want to fix things by nature. That is me to my core. And he wouldn't let that happen. So he knew that. And he knew that if he let me see any weakness or any sign that this had bothered him in the slightest, that I was going to go into fix it mode, which I definitely would have.
Right.
I don't doubt that at
and
all.
at that time, I didn't want that. Like, I didn't want,
You want it to go away
right.
and be fine.
I just want to
Yeah.
forget about it and move on. And you know what? That never happened, and just go about it. And ultimately, it doesn't work that way. And I understand that now, but at that time, I didn't, and that's how I dealt with it. Was it wrong? Sure, I should have dealt with it in a different way, but I should have talked to somebody. I mean, heck, as soon as we got back, I should be like, is anybody else bothered by what just happened here? Like,
Really?
I
Really?
mean,
let's
yeah.
cut the bullshit. Is it
yeah,
really
like, I mean,
wrong?
but I didn't. And now, if, say an incident like that happened again, I would take, I guess, 180 degrees from what I did the first time. I would definitely, I'd talk to the crew. I'd talk to, I'd tell Megan, hey, here's what happened, whatever. Like, I'd call my therapist. I'd, whatever I needed to do to make sure I could process that mentally and not be hung up on that.
He's much more aware now, too, of how things affect him, which makes a huge difference in both of our lives, in his life at work, too. So that's a world of difference, and that's all thanks to y'all. So,
Well, being self-aware is what Dr. T said is the first thing of being resilient, right? Is the buzzword resilient. Resiliency means different things for different people, but being self-aware that something's going on with you internally, that is the biggest step, and that's why I mentioned the courage, right?
Right.
You mentioned USAR. Can you kind of describe, tell the listener what USAR is, the unit that you're on, and what y'all do?
So USAR stands for Urban Search and Rescue. And USAR, you're trained in a variety of disciplines. Just a few of them: rope rescues, trench rescues, heavy damage motor vehicle rescues. And the way that I guess I would explain it to someone that had no knowledge of the fire service or maybe even the police side of things would be, if you look at a SWAT team for a police department, whenever, when you're frontline guys, when a situation happens and you can't handle it, you call SWAT because they've got, extra tactics. They've got maybe a little more knowledge, experience, and problem solving. That's essentially what USAR is for the fire service. Is that's your guys that, they've got the extra training, they've got extra tools, and it's additional problem solving and equipment that, you may not have on an everyday engine or truck that may be responding to something.
Okay. So it's like DFR's version, like a SWAT.
Essentially,
if a critical incident happened in Dallas, like an explosion, right, like a Oklahoma City bombing type explosion, that y'all would be deployed, right, to go in for immediate
structural
rescue.
collapse.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be from our side of things. Obviously, immediate rescues, but if it was a building explosion,
like 9/11.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
you're going to want to. You're going to want to look at, hey, what's left of the building? What's my structural integrity look like? Do we have people in there? Is a rescue going to be, viable? Is it worth us getting close to this thing to shore it up and to put our lives at risk to go crawling through there to get somebody, or is it going to be like a no-go situation? And that's essentially that's how that would probably go.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, it's fascinating. Even like a natural disaster, like that tornado we had ripped through.
Right.
Yeah, outlet.
Yeah. And they Dallas responded to that even. So it's
it was a mess.
We work with neighboring cities and
man, when that happened, I lived off of Dow Rock, just north of Miller. So I was
in Waterview that night when that thing came running through. Yeah.
Yeah, I had my daughter was 2, Carmen was 2, and remember how cold it got right after that? It was like bitter cold.
It was
in the
weird,
20s.
man.
Yeah,
it was weird. I remember even me and my parents, we were in the closet because sirens start going off, and we're like, whatever, So we go get in the closet with the dogs, and we're sitting there, and I was like, y'all hear that? And next thing you know, I mean, it sounds like freight train, and you're just like, whoa, like that's eerie.
Well, so I was on the east side of Dow Rock, right, just north of Miller, and on the lake, and when they got in the closet, and I remember just stepping out the front door, and I was looking over the houses towards Dow Rock, and I could see.
Total dad move. I mean,
I'm done.
Put everybody in the closet and let me walk outside and see what's going on.
Yeah, I'll keep you updated. Yeah. I walk up there, and I looking over the houses, and I see this humongous, enormous freaking winds, right? And then I start seeing transformers blowing up in green, these green explosions. That I am all right, I'm out. And I go back in, I get in the closet, lights go out, and then the shit stays off for like 3 days.
Yeah.
And it was like we almost had to get up and finally leave. Had the fireplaces going. After the third day, I think the electricity finally came back on, but it was like 64 degrees in the house, and having a 2-year-old was a beating. That was a beating trying to keep a 2-year-old entertained.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, it's like a caveman. I couldn't get on Facebook. Nothing. I want to get into how did you become aware of this podcast? You reached out to me because of this podcast, and I just want to know how that all came about.
I hate to say it, but I really don't remember how I found the podcast. I don't know if I had seen something, because on Instagram I follow police and fire pages, both of them,
Okay.
and I don't know if I'd seen something through the ATO there, but I know I listened to Spotify, and that's where I found it.
Yeah. Well, I had to start up these little social media things for the podcast specifically
Right.
from scratch, and
that could have, maybe that was it.
Maybe.
Like I think I told you that whenever I first started listening, you had just released like episode 2.
Oh crap! That was
So
early
I mean,
on.
it was real early.
But before I ever released Ed's, the first one, Misty was the second, right?
I believe so.
And we had already had 4 recorded before we released the first, because I wanted to have some in the can to kind of like have some padding there to get it to release them. That's interesting. So what struck you about this podcast when you first started listening to it? And yes, I know the production quality of the sound was not good. It
was fantastic. Yeah. It was fantastic. I had to replay it several times to understand what was going on.
Yeah, we did too.
No, I'm kidding. I think I was drawn to it, one, because it's out of Dallas. Like, the people that are coming on and they're talking, it's like, if they talk about a call or they talk about something, I'm like, oh, I know where that is. Like, I can relate to that, and then I guess just the other side of it, I like hearing stories from other people. Lately I've kind of become a big podcast junkie. Like I've got like 3 or 4 right now that I'm like bouncing between. It's like, oh, they got this guy on and this guy, and bouncing around. I just like hearing people's stories, and I like, you can take something away from anyone that you listen to, whether it's good, bad, whatever. When you listen to someone's story, especially as a first responder, and maybe you hear an incident they had to deal with, or maybe you hear about a situation, or maybe one of their accomplishments. I mean, whatever it may be, you can take something away from that, and it's viable. And I think that's what really drew me to it. Is I was like, and listening to this, I'm not a police officer, but I can kind of understand, where these guys and girls are coming from, is with some of their stories. And then obviously, as you guys have progressed, and you've had on firemen, you've had
Chief
on
Bill,
you've had on all kinds of people, and it's also good to see perspective from what's the chief seeing, and what's the new guy seeing, what's the middle, the guy that's 15 years into a 30-year career, what's he seeing. I mean, I think it's just it gives you more perspective.
Well, I think that was Joe's biggest goal starting this, and I know we've talked about it before, is the workout sessions we had, and just the time talking about how he wanted to get this going. That's why it's bridging the divide. We wanted everybody's perspective to let us know, hey, we wanted to normalize first responders as much as possible, and let everyone know that they're not alone. I think we talked about it in Chris White's episode. Sometimes we think we're alone, the only one battling a situation.
Right.
But until other people start talking about it, it's like, oh, fuck, I'm not the only one feeling this way or thinking this way. And it helps people talk about what they're going on.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so great getting you on here, because I guess he's obviously been able to open up.
Yeah, absolutely. The podcast is what changed kind of the trajectory of where his life was going. His whole life. Because
I really, if looking back on it now, I mean, realistically, if I wouldn't have been going to work that day, because typically when you release an episode, I'll see it and I'm like, awesome, and I'll wait for the next shift. My drive to work's about an hour, so usually I'll start it in the morning, start it in the car. I'm coming in, drinking my coffee, getting ready to work out at the station in the morning. Man, if I wouldn't have listened to that episode, I do not know where I would be headed right now. I don't. I obviously would not be okay mentally. But I don't know what trajectory that would have set me on had I not have just listened to that, and had it not struck me the way that it did.
And it's really important, I think, for other people to hear that, because I could sit here. I had been telling him, like, Zach, please, you need to go see someone. You need to talk to someone that's not me, because talking to me isn't making a difference. Like, I'm your wife, and I know that I can help you, but I can't help you in the way that you need help.
Right.
And he was like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, and, I mean, I blew it off. I was like, you're just saying that you got some, psych degree from college that, you think you're awesome because you're a Red Raider. And, that's just, but that's how I portrayed it at the time, is I was like,
you're minimizing her.
That's
Yes.
accurate
Right.
portrayal.
Right.
As an Aggie. Randy's an Aggie.
Oh, no.
That's even worse.
All right, this interview's over.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just
thanks
think,
for coming down. No.
Yeah, see ya. I just think it's so important because it gave Zach, someone else literally that he had never heard of in his life, talk to these points, and every single point he could relate to in some way.
I mean, I was checking every box, and I think that's what hit me is, as the episode went through, I was like, they'd say whatever. I mean, whatever example that may have been brought up, I was like, that's me, and then it'd keep going another couple minutes. Holy crap, that's me. Holy crap, that's me. And just by the end of the podcast, I'm sitting there going like, I'm not okay. Like, for the first time, I realized that myself, like, I am not okay.
Can you tell the listener what episode you're talking about here?
Episode 27
Yeah.
with Dr. T.
The great Dr. Heather Twaddell.
The great Dr. T.
Yeah, I got her name right on the first try. She's awesome. I've been working with her a lot more lately because the DPD is starting our new wellness unit up. It's the Owl Initiative, and we have been going back and forth, and we've had some meetings with her on some things. She's going to be assisting with that, thank God, because she's really good. When you heard that episode, you said you checked off all the boxes.
Yes.
What did you do then? I mean, like,
so I had to listen to it again to make sure I was hearing it right. So I listened to it going to work. I got to work and I was like, man, that it really just struck me. So I worked that shift and I couldn't get it out of my head. So then I'm listening to it the next day, and
we were actually driving to Austin, and he was like, we're going to listen to this again. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, and I was like, just listen to it. Humor me. Just listen to this with me. Tell me, am I hearing this right?
or not? Yeah.
Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I know you've said all of this to me before, but listen to what she's saying and then tell me.
She's sitting there like,
Yes,
dumbass, you should have been listening to me
And
this
that's
whole time.
exactly how it went. She was like, you idiot. Like, I've told you this for, 2 years.
It's so interesting still to this day, like even through that episode and everything with his therapist now, he'll come home and he'll be like, oh yeah, my therapist said this. I'm like, oh really? He did, huh?
Can you see her head?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's a huge. Why is she
totally.
writing down? I told you so.
Totally.
I've already been measuring the door frames in the house to see if I need to go ahead and start expanding or.
But I'm so glad.
Megan's taking down the live, laugh, love sign and putting "I told you so" on the wall. That's what she's
It's
at.
everywhere.
Yeah, I'm so grateful though. And every day, even though I say I told you so, I'm like, thank goodness, because he is so much better off. We are so much better off, and it's all thanks to him checking off those boxes and making a change. And I know that was really hard for him. So
I can imagine. Randy and I starting this little podcast. I said if we could help one person, it's worth it. Well, here you are. Here's the one person.
Right.
Yeah.
I've had other people reach out. Very respected sergeant on the department reach out talking about struggling and hearing Dottie Claggett's episode, and the next week booking an appointment, and that means a lot. That really, from where we started sitting here with an iPad recording this crap, and now we're having T-shirts made. It's and we're going to a podcast festival and having folks reach out from other states and countries. It's way beyond that I imagine. It started off kind of like a hobby, and we'll see what happens. But in Dr. T's 3-day seminar, that's what gave me the idea for this. Is at the first and the Frisco Star, and they had the 10 first responders up there telling their stories for 10 minutes. And I was watching the room whenever they were that's just 10 minutes.
Right.
Ed was the first to go. Ed Lujan. He told his story, and man, everybody in the room, there was nobody was jacking around their phone. There was
everybody's tuned.
They're
in.
engaged. A lot of people were tearing up. A lot of people were shaking their head.
Right.
You saw physical reactions to these stories, right? Of these first responders just talking about. It wasn't all just injury. It was some just dealing with alcoholism, and they did that to cope with what they're seeing. And it takes a lot to come forward to say stuff like that. And then being in here, man. Hell, I can't tell you how many times that we've had some just true badasses. I mean, Randy, we've had some badass people that have just lost it, and we've paused it, taken breaks, changed the mood, did some stupid ass jokes, show some dirty memes, and get back on track. But everybody left. Even Chief Bill said that he had sent a very nice email after his episode. He talked about getting badly burned, that other parts of the country his family's from, and they heard his story for the first time that way, and it was therapeutic for him to tell that story. You know, and I've heard that from a lot of different people. Hell, even Randy, everybody that's told their story it's hard. It's a lot of things that to get
but
through.
In a way, it's therapy. I mean, that's what it is. You're talking about it. You're working back through it. You may not want to, but in a sense, that's kind of what this podcast, I guess, gives you. If you've been through those difficult calls, and you come and talk to people. I mean, you don't have to be with a therapist. You can be with your guys at the station. You can be with your wife. You can be with your friends, whatever. But if you're talking about it and you're just putting it out there, you're going to feel better about it because it's not just caught up in your own head.
Well, and you also hear, and I've heard other people that say that, man, wow, you hear people that, let's say like Steve Claggett on SWAT, you hear him getting choked up telling a story about pulling Larry Bromley out of the back of that car. It's when you hear people, you hear peers, or you hear of other people that are known to be badasses, and they're telling a story, and they're talking about how they did not cope with it well, and they could have done things better. Right. Somebody else could probably hear that and say, damn, if they can do it, right? And I'm hoping that Dr. T's episode struck you, and I'm sure other episodes struck you in different ways too. But I'm hoping your story does the same. You're paying it forward, right? To everybody, every other listener 100%. Moving forward, and that's what this is about. And there's been times, and hell, Randy, I was even close to stopping at episode 50 and just wrapping it up, right? And we're getting close to episode 50. I mean, as far as how many recordings we have, I think this is
Stupid.
This is 40. This is number 49, actually.
Right, and I mean, initially, whenever I had told Megan, hey, I sent those guys a message, let them know, hey, they're doing, awesome job. It's helped me out. She was like, they're going to ask you to come on there, right? And I was like,
that was Danny and Misty's idea.
I was like, no, they're not. Like, you kidding me? Like, little, 4-year rookie for the Dallas Fire Department. Like, what does this guy offer? You know what I mean? And then when you came back and actually asked me about it, at first I was very hesitant. I was like, because at that time I was still fairly early.
That was months ago.
Yeah. I was still fairly early going through therapy, reworking some of that.
In the first program?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Dr. T's in her program.
It's through her program.
Okay.
It's through.
Good.
It's
good.
through first. I just go to a location that's in Fort Worth instead of up at Frisco. It's closer to me.
Excellent.
But yeah, and so I was very reluctant, just because where I was at that time. But then the more I sat on it and thought about it, I was like, if I could go on here and talk about, what's happened with me as far as, the calls that I had to experience and how that affected me as, 4-year rookie on fire department, maybe somebody else that's new, because like I said, I can't offer you 30 years of experience. It's not where I'm at. But if I could offer a new person, someone that's, maybe in that I'm just getting started or I'm thinking about joining to upwards of that, 5-year mark, give or take, like, you're still fairly new and you're still trying to uphold that, I'm trying to be a hard ass like everybody else, like if they listen to this and they're struggling with something, then, it's okay to reach out. Like it's really okay. It's hard. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's not hard. That was the hardest phone call I ever made, was calling first. I mean, she can tell you. I was, I was on the phone crying, telling them, I need help. I can't do this anymore. And
well, I hope just you coming on here reminds old people, older officers, a bit more experienced guys, say, hey, don't be such a dumbass. Don't be so cynical. Don't be so stuck in your ways. Right. Remember what it was to be a 4-year, 5-year officer and get that enthusiasm back and that love for the job.
Right.
If they can remember that hopefully that'll get them through something. If that's just a little bit like, what, maybe I shouldn't be so crotchety and
everybody's dealing with something
outside.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody in this profession that's done it any length of time is dealing with something, whether they want to admit it or not.
Right.
And hopefully they can do something about it to save their life, their marriage, right?
Right.
Their career.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the time we're in, right? I mean, we've had the same problems for years and years and years and years and years.
Generations.
But just now it's coming to a forefront of, hey, let's, there's ways that we can handle this.
Normalizing the need for mental health and counseling for first responders needs to be infectious.
Yeah. Making it known that it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
Making that acceptable, because it is. It's normal. It's human nature.
You reached out to me after the great Mike Reiner episode and said, "Wow!" I said, "Hey, after some urging from my wife, I think I'm ready to come on." And I was like, "Oh, wow!" So I sent a message to Danny and Randy and Misty, and I said, "Hey, I said that firefighter that reached out months ago, I think he's ready to come on." And then there was some time there. There was like another little lull that we stopped chatting. And I was like, I changed his mind, And I'm glad that you sent me your bio. You're very busy. You sent me a good bio, and then I had something. Okay, wow. And then I saw that your wife said, "Oh, wow, she has a background in psychology. I could use that. I could use that for this episode and squeeze every bit I can out of it."
Yeah, I mean, without her here, we would have talked for 5 minutes, and it's done. But because she's here.
So now that you have us here, you have us cornered here on the mic. Suggestions for improvements, and believe me, we don't mind criticism. What do you think? What can we do better to make this podcast better and for the listener and touch more people?
Man, that's hard. That's hard to answer. Just because, I mean, one, I'm a listener and I enjoy it so much. So like for me looking in, or me, I'm like, oh, nothing's wrong with it. Like it's been great. Like help me out. And gosh, I don't know, man.
Was there any topics that you would want us to touch on in later episodes? We've got others recorded I don't know about yet, but you know.
I think going forward, just especially if people openly like I did just reach out and say, hey, thanks for what you're doing, like this helped me this kind of way, like if they're willing to come on like I am and tell their story, just say I think the more that you get of that, you get, for lack of a better way to put it, more buy-in. I mean, you get more people are saying, they hear it and they're like, you know what? Hey, this guy came in and, he's had some similar problems I have.
It's normalizing it.
Yeah. And it's slowly, it's hopefully will slowly kind of spread and, get to that point where it's not, I don't want to say frowned upon. I think that's a bad way to look at it. Maybe
it's not a good word for that, but that's what I was going to say.
Maybe just back to the stigma of it, right? Like just that. Okay, you're a police officer, fireman. You're supposed to be a big tough guy and never have your emotional moment. But then you normalize, say, hey, you know what? It's okay. And you know what? If it happens at the station, it happens at the station. It doesn't have to happen at home in your closet when you're in the fetal position. It can happen. It can happen around your peers, and it's okay.
Yes, and I point to this when I talk to people off the air. We had on the great Will Chesney, the Navy SEAL.
Yes.
And you talk about people with bulletproof minds, right? And just the most mentally tough, sharpened people in the world. And to hear him come on and talk about, it wasn't what he was seeing and doing that got to him. It was him losing his friends in that Operation Extortion. That's what broke him. Mm-hmm. But to hear him talk about drinking till he'd fall asleep, till his nails and hair were falling out, to get somebody on that has that bulletproof of a mind and is that trained to fall apart. Anybody can fall apart. It doesn't matter if you're 30 year veteran.
No, it doesn't
anybody.
matter.
It doesn't matter. The mind is, very, very tricky. Well, you're going through Dr. T's episode. What, if you remember, hit you the most to be introspective?
I think one of the things that was said was, as a first responder, like you take care of your body but not your mind, right?
Yeah.
And that was one of the things I was like, oh crap, this might be me, because I try to watch what I eat. I work out religiously, and so in hearing that, I was just like, man, that I don't know
that hit you.
Yeah. That was a big one because it made me start that kind of snowball of self-reflection, I guess. Yeah. And then I started looking at, continuing in that episode, she says that, your body will eventually let you know, hey, that can't do this anymore. You try and throw it out of your mind. And I'll give you an example. So we had a really stressful year last year, just a lot of big life events, and a year and a half, I got engaged, married, got a new dog, moved twice, started building a house, finished building a house. I mean, it was a busy year.
It's a lot of shit.
Yeah, that's a lot of shit for anybody. Mm-hmm. And so at the time, we were living with my parents before we were moving into the house. And I went and got a chiropractor adjustment one day because I was like, man, my back is just off, and this was, I don't know, probably last October-ish, or right before last October. So I go to chiropractor adjustment, and I walk back to the front desk, and the girl's looking at me, and her eyes are like huge. And I'm like, you okay? And she's like, are you okay? And I was like, what do you mean, am I okay? She's like, that was loud. She's like, I heard all that from, all the way up here at the front desk. Meaning, the back and neck were popping loud. Right. And I was like, okay, So I get home, and this was probably 30 minutes later, and I just start feeling just sick. I mean, just physically, just like I'm going to throw up. I'm getting nauseous. And as I, hearing that episode and then thinking back on it, I was like, there's a way right there. I was so stressed out and carrying so much crap that by even just going for a chiropractor adjustment, it released all that tension, and just the toxins started flowing, in my body and making me feel just sick. And whenever I thought back on that, I was like, man, that's crazy. Like that was one of the big things that struck me, as I was like, that's no BS. Like, your body will tell you at some point, like, you can't keep putting this off. Like,
yeah, the check engine light's on for a good while.
For sure. Yeah.
So can you describe the first process and what therapy they exposed you to, and what really resonated with you that they do?
So the first, you'll have to remind me.
Do you want me to do it?
This is Megan's wheelhouse.
So he called, and they set him up with a therapist that's under First, and he went, and
it was within like 4 or 5 days. Like, it was pretty quick. Yeah. It was like, hey, let's get you in here. Let's see what's going on.
They had he had his first session, and he came home, and he kind of told me about it, and I was like, oh yeah, they're gonna do EDMR with you.
Yeah.
Like, immediately. I knew that that's what they were gonna do, only because of the way he processes things. I had already known that, and I am not a therapist, so I do not do this, but EDMR basically is a mind stimulation with eye movements, and you hold some things in your hands that also vibrate, and it's a way of processing a memory and putting it back in the right place versus the wrong place. I knew that's what he did for multiple sessions, I think.
Yeah, I did that for the first... not my first session, but I guess the next 3 after that. Each session I would take time and walk back through those memories. And I mean, it was, start to finish, you're sitting there going through them, and
it's very emotional.
Yeah, I mean, it is extremely
exhausting too.
Yes, and that was one thing. Whenever I would get done, my therapist would be like, "No, you're probably gonna be really tired," and I'm kind of thinking like, yeah, whatever. Well, then, like, I'd leave, and I'm like, man, I am just
so you took a Benadryl.
Yeah, I mean, you're just emotionally, you are drained. And so that was probably the first 3 that I did, 3 to 4 that I did. And then after that, once those were processed, then we started focusing on, okay, so those are out of your, I guess it's a loop. What does that refer to? The
OODA loop?
Yeah, it's basically just a loop where it's going to a place that's not good, so it's not storing correctly, so it keeps coming to your forefront of your mind.
Right.
When you get out of that loop, it's in a appropriate place that can be stored where you can move past it. Obviously, it never goes away, but it's stored in a place that is okay for you to move forward.
So after I worked through those and they were, stored, so to speak, then it was like, okay, so we've got rid of that. Now where are we at? Now, are we at baseline? Do we have stuff going on? And for me, I've got, a million things going on. So he's like, okay, well, you're still pretty out of whack. So we need to see, what are your stressors? What's stressing you out right now? What's giving you anxiety? What's, pretty much exploring all the different things that you're doing or actions that you're taking that could be affecting you negatively, that maybe you don't realize it, maybe you're going out too many times a week drinking and you think you're just doing it to have fun, and then next thing you know, you're going out, every shift that you're off, you're going out having a few too many beers. That's a negative impact.
Yeah.
Working out too much. I'm guilty of that one. Just, you get in the gym and you're like, man, I feel like I'm stressed, like all this crap in my mind. And next thing you know, you look at your watch and you've been there 2.5 hours, and you're like, oh, well, I guess I need to leave now. And you don't want to, because by working out,
it's distracting you.
Yeah, it's a distractor. Yeah. And for me, I think that's really why I hate to say this, but that's why my fitness has stayed so well for so long, is because I'm always running with, I run 9-0 all the time. That's just my personality. I'm a high drive person. I like to be busy. I like to be doing things. But then when you tack on all of life's crap, then you start using working out as a way to just deflect all that. And, eventually, like it did for me, it's all going to come crashing down, and then you're going to be like, what's going on? What's wrong with me? And you can't use the gym anymore to just shelf your problems.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. The great Dr. Tanya Glenn, she's really big in MDR, and we have an episode coming up with a Cedar Park, Texas officer. She got shot up, and Tanya did therapy on her and help her get back on her feet. It's coming up. Jackie Keelis. It's going to be soon. But that is a fascinating episode because she really delves into we actually have a therapist and the client, right?
Awesome.
Yeah, sitting there talking about it, and it's really, I think the listeners are really gonna like that one. And she really discusses EMDR because she got back into that type of therapy when it was kind of looked at as kind of voodoo type thing. Nobody wanted to accept it into the mental health world, and that was back when the Oklahoma City bombings happened, and yeah, that's a good episode, but this is on topic, so don't look at me crazy. Have you ever seen that movie Dr. Sleep? It's a sequel to The Shining.
I don't think I have.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
No.
Okay, I want y'all to go watch that.
Okay.
It's actually a good movie.
All
Ewan McGregor's in it. It's a good movie. It's a sequel. It picks up 30 years after the first Shining, right?
Okay.
With basically in the movie, there's boxes within the kid's mind, right? The kid from The Shining, he's grown up now. He's Ewan McGregor, and he's dealing with alcoholism, and there's boxes in his mind that he has trained himself to store things in. That's what this reminds. Yeah, and it's really, every time I hear about EMDR and I hear about your description of it, it makes me think of that movie. I'm serious. It's a good movie. Yeah. It's creepy as hell, but it's good.
Yeah,
it's
both
good.
of those movies.
You gotta read the books. Man, I can't. I've been really excited to sit down with you because we've been going back and forth, and you're the only person I've ever asked to come on and tell their story, right? And I'm glad that you did. I think that the listeners are really gonna. I think it's gonna resonate with them.
I hope so,
and I know it will.
I hope that if just one person takes anything away from this, then me coming out here today was worth it. And that's, that, like I said, that's why I decided to come out here. Is like if one person sitting there, new guy, old girl, old girl, whatever, doesn't matter. If you're sitting there and maybe you've been having, problems with calls replaying in your head, or maybe you're just stressed all the time. Maybe you're drinking too much caffeine because you're stressed and you're tired and whatever. If one person listens to this today and then they say, hey, you know what, maybe I will call first, or maybe I will call one of my department's programs or reach out to my association or whatever, then this whole thing's worth it.
Yeah, the Sissy Alcer Foundation, a lot of Dallas firefighters, they don't realize that the Sissy Alcer Foundation provides both financial and the confidential counseling to them as well.
Right.
I Bill. Yeah. I hear that a lot. I haven't talked to many firefighters that actually knew that was a thing.
Right.
And they are appreciative after they found out that it's a thing. We have some other firefighters we have slated to come on because we are going to go past 50 episodes.
Right.
We'll see how many. But I can't thank you enough for coming on here. Seriously, it means a lot, and it means a lot to Randy and I to see some. This is what we sought out when we started this thing, right? At the very least, we'll entertain people. Was cool ass stories
yeah.
and dumb shit. But to see an actual success story of what our original mission was, that really I can't tell you, it means a lot to me.
Right.
That makes this whole thing worth it. All the hours of research, and Danny works his ass off putting these things together, and hopefully one day you get to meet, Danny Canetti. He's incredible.
So, yeah.
Misty, she would have been here, but she's out in Montana right now hiking in the mountains. Yeah. So she took like a whole month off.
Nice.
So good for her.
Nice.
Yeah, I wish I could do it.
I do have one thing to say before you
Okay.
wrap this up.
Sure.
And this is something I told Zack too that I think was really important for him to hear, is that therapy doesn't have to be a forever thing that you go to. And that was really, like, Zack thought, he's like, I'm messed up, I'm gonna have to do this for the rest of my life, and that is not true. It's a tool for you to use when you need it, and you use it as much as you can, but it's not. For example, Zack doesn't go every week anymore, and there will come a time where he stops going to see his therapist, and that he will only go to his therapist should something come up.
Right.
And I think that's important for people to hear, because it's not a forever thing that you are going through. Sometimes people just need help to process literally one thing, and it makes the biggest difference in your life. So I think that's just really important for people to remember. And it was important for Zack to hear that from me, because he basically thought, he's like, all right, I'm going to start this and it's going to go on forever. But that's definitely not true.
Because initially that's what I thought. I mean, that's how I understood it. It's like, oh, people that go to therapy, wow, they do that, every week forever. And
I'm gonna be in a straitjacket in a couple months.
no, I mean that's what that's what I told Megan. I was like, are they gonna have that curved couch where like I lay on it, and,
Yeah.
I'm kicked back, talking. And my first day there, it was like, I'm gonna help you get through this. And at the end of the day, coming from my therapist, he said that, my goal is to talk myself out of a job. Like, you shouldn't be here forever. Like, if you're here for a long time, I'm not doing my job well enough, because you're not, you're not getting what you need out of this. And so it's gone from a weekly thing to a bi-weekly thing to soon it's going to be a monthly thing. And then, hopefully, who knows, maybe the beginning of next year, maybe it's like, all right, well, see you when I see you kind of thing, So
That's progress and that's success.
yes,
Right.
100%.
Well, Megan, Zack, I think that's a perfect way to wrap this up. I want to thank y'all both for your service in the DFR, and you helping this poor kids out, and
Thank you.
and actually keeping this guy in line.
I try my best.
Somebody's got to
Someone's
do
got
it.
to,
Yeah.
Thank y'all for coming on. Seriously, it means a lot.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you so
for all
much,
y'all
yeah.
have done. Really, it means a lot.
It's made a huge difference.
Good. Thanks.
Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Down when you're lonely, I'll pull you up. Life leaves you heavy when the going gets tough. I'll be your shoulder, together we'll run. Up from the bottom, yeah, we'll rise above. Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. I'll never give up on you. Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far, for the gold and the blue, I'll never give up on you.